Welcome everyone to another episode of Tutorial Tuesday. It's week 20, 2020. I'm so glad that you're along with us. Thank you for tuning in and thank you for participating. I have one announcement and then we'll get right into your questions. That first announcement is this. I still have a few spots remaining in my September workshop out on the DX Ranch in South Dakota with Jen Zeller. So go ahead, swipe over, check that out. Sign up. You don't want to miss out on these workshops. With that, let's go ahead and get right into your questions. Thanks so much for the question. When it comes to gear, when it comes to the technical side of photography and things like that, I really enjoy these questions because they're very hashtag photo nerdy for me, and I enjoy them. So my favorite lens is definitely, so that said, the absolute favorite lens in my kit, my 16 to 35 by far is, hands down for me, it's my most creative lens. It's the one that I enjoy using the most because I can, while my 70 to 200 is by far my workhorse. In fact, I would even venture to guess that looking back over the last decade, I've probably taken 80% of all the images with my 70 to 200. Every lens has its place. I have my 70 to 200, I have my 16 to 35, and I also have a 50 millimeter 1.4 that I use as well. I don't use that 50 as much. That 16 to 35 is my go-to. How do you make money out of branding? If you look at it from just a transactional point of view, without any, I would say, business sense behind it, you're probably not going to make any money out of branding. But if you look at it from the opportunity perspective, look, and let me be clear, it's not just branding. It's any activity that you go into with the mindset that you can offer your services to anybody there, whether that's seniors, weddings, whatever. Business isn't prescriptive, and it requires you, the business owner, to get out and hustle your services. If you're looking at it again from a very narrow perspective, you're probably going to go hungry. If hustling isn't in your nature, then I would encourage you to swipe over and listen in to the podcast, the Small Business Roundup, where we talk about being business owners. Go ahead, swipe over, listen to that. Really good question here. Tips on event shooting and business marketing. The first and the biggest thing that comes to mind for me is something that's carried me over the last decade is find yourself an outstanding event planner. Now, in saying that, I do recognize that I'm in the capital city of Utah, and of course, that opens up more doors for me, especially from an event shooting standpoint. But if you're rural, look to the nearest city and try and find one. A couple practical tips on event shooting. Number one, know your equipment intuitively. I say that all the time, but when it comes to events, you absolutely need to have a handle on white balance and setting custom white balance. When it comes to events, whether that's a wedding or a business event or something like that, you need to know how to handle those warm tungsten lights or the green cast of those beautiful fluorescent lights. Those are my biggest tips. And the last practical tip here on event shooting, which is kind of a tongue-in-cheek one, know that this is more than just putting your camera into automatic white balance. Be able to use the colors to your advantage. Yikes, that dreaded C word. Nobody likes to talk about creativity, and I'm definitely the poster boy for it. There are many times that my creativity or my muse has run away from home. I've had to put up wanted signs. If anybody finds my creativity, please bring it back to me. Here's a couple things that I do, and I know it's going to sound almost cliche, but when your creativity is at a standstill, you need to create. And that creativity is going to come from random places. Maybe you're watching a YouTube video and you decide, man, I want to try and emulate that lighting. Or maybe it comes from a book. My biggest tip is be open to that creativity and go out and create. Emily, the advice that I'm going to give you comes from someone that isn't a wildlife photographer. However, if I were to get into that genre of photography and go out and photograph the bison up in Yellowstone, I would be looking to get long lenses like Nikon's 2 to 500 or Canon's 1 to 400. On the far end, you can spend a lot of money, which I know you don't want to do, but a 600 millimeter lens or an 800 millimeter lens is going to set you back, tens of thousands of dollars, while these other lenses are going to be in the neighborhood of, $1,000 to $2,000. I would take a look at those. For you as a Nikon shooter, look at the 2 to 500, and that should fall within a reasonable budget for anybody. Always a good question. So I use the Tenba Shootout 24L. I've had that for the last couple of years. I've been thoroughly happy with it. Stores my laptop, goes on the plane with me, stores all my equipment. Love it. And finally, I just want to follow up on this question and also provide a couple of recommendations from Sigma and Tamron. They both make a 150 to 600. And Jordan and Jake, thank you for chiming in with your recommendations as well. I appreciate that. And Emily, I hope this helps you. This is always a great question, and I think you could do a whole workshop just on figuring out what your worth is in the industry. Is this a side gig for you? Are you full-time? How long you've been in the industry? And also not to mention the reputation that you've built for yourself. Now, someone that is doing this just as a hobby, their worth is going to be less than somebody that's doing this full-time. I think the biggest factor involved in figuring out what you're worth is the confidence, is your confidence. And it's not just your confidence in selling it to your client, it's your confidence in yourself as well. And I think finally, at the end of the day, you have to have an honest conversation with yourself and ask yourself if your time and the talent that you have right now and the experience equals what that translates out to is having the confidence to put a number on what you're worth on an hourly basis. What I charged 10 years ago is drastically different than what I charge now. But you also have to recognize that your worth will change in time, and it's a conversation that you do have to have with yourself, and an honest one at that.